Well, good evening, WNBA and LA Sparks fans, and welcome in to the LA Sparks 365 Network, your 24/7, 365 comprehensive home for the WNBA, and Los Dos, your two-time WNBA champion Los Angeles Sparks. Coming right, folks, on a Monday night for the first time in quite some time, here on LAS 365. Here tonight for this Monday edition of WNBA 365 here, live and in full on LAS 365. Of course, alongside Chris Amanci from the Internet Studios in Anaheim, California. Via the Google Hangout, we're joining you folks here from Studio 171 in San Diego. Chris, good evening, man. It's been a pretty busy day across the social media platforms today and at the radio station. Other than that, how has the day been, and what's good, buddy?
No, nothing much. Just hanging here still.
Yeah, there's not a lot else going on. We finally have, we're just hanging out, folks. Actually, getting to some pretty big news today in regards to the LA Sparks here tonight on 365. Of course, folks, we'll have the number one show on the network. We'll have Sparks Fan coming up next at the bottom of the hour here at 10:30 p.m. But, folks, and a reminder here again that the LA Sparks are looking to break barriers and break records when the Sparks host the San Antonio Stars on August 30th, when the Sparks will look to set a brand new indoor WNBA game attendance record when they have over 22,000 women at the game as a part of their We Are Women campaign that's going on throughout the entire 2015 season. For more information on that game, please visit LASparks.com. The LA Sparks, we are women, we are strong, we are LA. With that, Chris, hot news off the top of the program, man, that broke about 3 o'clock this afternoon, where the Los Angeles Sparks, Chris, brought back an old friend of ours, man, and brought back an aged veteran. As today, folks, the Los Angeles Sparks signing veteran guard Tamika Johnson, Executive Vice President and GM Penny told announced today in her team policy. Terms of the deal were not allowed to be disclosed. The 10-year WNBA vet returns to LA for her 11th WNBA season and second stint with the Sparks. Prior to her return, she spent the 2013 and 14 campaigns with the Seattle Storm, averaging 8 points, 3.6 assists, and 2.3 rebounds in 66 career games with the Storm. 34 of those were starts. Last season, she recorded only the 5th triple-double in WNBA history with 13 points, 11 assists, and a career-high 10 rebounds on July 25th in an overtime loss to New York. Sparks head coach Brian Agler says, "We are excited to bring Tamika back to the Sparks. Tamika has the ability to play the point guard position and lead a team on the floor, and will add quality depth at the guard position. She has developed into an excellent three-point shooter and can impact the game with her defensive ability and excellent skill in pick-and-roll situations." Johnson has played for 5 different teams in her 10-year career: Seattle, Tulsa, Phoenix, LA, and Washington. In her 293 career games played, 244 of those starts, she's averaged roughly 8.3 points, 2.8 rebounds, and 4.5 assists per game. In 2009, she averaged 9.6 points, 4.6 assists, and a career-high 3.5 rebounds per game in 34 starts to help lead Phoenix to the postseason en route to capturing the franchise's first WNBA title. In Johnson's 3 years with the Sparks, she averaged 6.4 points, 2.6 rebounds, 4 assists, and 21.4 minutes per game in 66 contests. 59 of those 66 games were starts. She also helped LA reach the conference finals in 2 of her 3 years. An LSU product, Johnson was selected 6th overall by Washington in the 2008 WNBA draft and earned Rookie of the Year honors after averaging 9.3 points, 3.1 rebounds, and a career-high 5.2 assists per game in her first debut season. Well, Chris, we had sat here last week, sort of a bit puzzled, I guess, man, that Seattle would let one of their core players go again. That was sort of that one player that kind of held that team together like glue, because they had such a tough time last year battling injuries, with Lauren Jackson missing time and Sue Bird being hit and miss. And Chris, we both said that, we wouldn't be surprised if LA had signed her because of her knowledge of Brian Agler as a coach and his philosophy and system. But Chris, really, man, no surprise on my side of the story, man. What are your thoughts about the Sparks, again, bringing back a familiar face, but also, man, possibly, Chris, that veteran leader that you need to go alongside with Elena Beard. Again, 10-plus years in the league, 07 champ, man. Your thoughts about the Sparks bringing back EJ back to LA or what?
Very great to bring Tamika Johnson back since she knows Brian Agler, his philosophy, and another veteran to go along with, like you said, AB and everything.
Chris, also, this will actually help out Candace Parker, in my view, too, because, Chris, as we know, Candace had played with Meeks 08-09, her first 2 years in the WNBA, sort of grooming her in a way along with Lisa Leslie. So, Chris, it's always good, though, that you bring in these players. Now, Chris, a lot of fans, we know today when we were talking about the news, that a lot of our friends, Chris, were a bit is this really a good idea? Or Chris, I mean, we got a lot of response today, Chris. Both positive responses, negative feedback about why the Sparks did this move. My view, Chris, I mean, whenever that you can bring in veteran leadership to the roster, it always helps. And I think, Chris, that with you have Elena Beard in her 12th season, Meeks in her 11th year, man, they can groom all these new kids like, Debovic and Tolo, and then plus we even got Aaron Phillips as well, too. So, Chris, you have your three studs, your three age veterans, plus, Candace Parker in her 8th season in the WNBA. And again, and you still have a growing Nneka Ogwumike and a blossoming Jantel Lavender. So, Chris, this move, though, man, in my view, not only helps the locker room situation, man, but it also, man, helps out grooming the younger kids coming up, especially Chris like Jen Hampson, and even Chris. This also goes and it also picks out to Lav and No and Candace, and then of course Chris, all the foreign players too that don't know Agler's system. Meeks already knows the system, so of course that always helps. So your final thoughts about this or what?
Just very great. In the system of Brian Agler, so they could help out the players on the team.
Yeah, Chris, it's the most important thing, man. Now I know that we've got, somewhat of a little bit of a roller coaster of emotion. Like, yeah, it's good. Same times, like, I've heard, we've heard that she's been a cancer in the locker room. I mean, Chris, only time will tell, and again, we don't know what goes on behind closed doors anyway, so we're making a big deal of that anyway. But folks, big news today, the LA Sparks bringing back and signing veteran guard Tamika Johnson to a contract today. Again, Meeks had played with LA from 06 to 08, led the team to the conference finals during her first stint here with Los Angeles, along with playing with Phoenix, Seattle, Tulsa, and Washington in her first season back in 2005. Chris, it's been very quiet still amongst the WNBA home front. Not a lot has been really happening. More so, Chris, we've been talking about the NCAA tournament. We've been talking about a lot of other things going on. But again, just not a whole lot in regards to player procurement or player movement. In regards to moves made, again, we've had a lot of players that have really stayed put, players that have signed lucrative contracts or have signed small portion contracts. So again, not much else really to really pick and choose on here, but again, more so. But again, folks, big news today. But again, once more, LA Sparks today signing veteran guard Tamika Johnson to a contract today. Earlier this afternoon, as she leaves Seattle for Los Angeles. Now, Chris, my only the only thing I can really say now, Chris, about this is kind of Chris pandering over the Sparks roster again. Now we know, man, that last week we had talked about the roster in a small fashion. Now, Chris, a few players on the team don't have a assigned number yet on their side of the score between Jen Hampson and Alina Babkina. But Chris, I think, man, that as we said last week, it's kind of been a not really confusing offseason for the Sparks, Chris. But again, this has been pretty much been a major overhaul. I mean, what we've seen, man, from the Sparks dumping Harrington day one, dumping Harding a few days later, having Candace Williams, Chris, go and play and sign a contract with New York, man. I mean, this is a completely different LA roster coming into camp in a few weeks up there at LA Southwest College or somewhere in Los Angeles, Chris. I guess what I'm getting at here is we know that Brian Agler is, goes all out or all in on the foreign players. But Chris, in your mind though, man, as you look at the roster, you're seeing, Latvia and Serbia and all these, players that you kind of never really heard much about because they played their whole career overseas. Is that a reason, Chris, that Sparks fans should kind of be a bit concerned that Brian and Penny and Magic have brought in a lot of players, Chris, that really have no sort of background on them, that basically you're putting together a roster of pretty much nobody. I mean, sure, you got Candace Parker and Owen Lab and Phillips, but Chris, I think that with these other players that you're bringing in, that again, Chris, that we have no knowledge about, any sort of room for error and/or your thoughts, I guess, man, about sort of this complete roster makeover done, where it's been pretty much Chris, a few players, and then the rest of the globe coming over here, man. I guess, man, your overall thoughts about all the juggling made by the Sparks this offseason. In regards, man, to the foreign players coming over here, where, again, man, we really have no knowledge about how well if they can actually play over here in the States based on the overseas career.
Just very weird and just signing players from overseas and not players we don't even know about.
Chris, I think the Sparks are taking a pretty big gamble here. I think that LA, as much, Chris, as it may look good on paper so far, Phillips, Parker, Wnba, Lavender, Hampson, the returning core from last year, plus, Chris, all these, foreign imports along with TJ, man. I mean, yes, it may look good right now on March 23rd, Chris, but I mean, how's it going to be June 6th in Seattle, basically, man? Who's going to be staying, man? I guess, Chris, it's early, man, but I guess, Chris, foreign players, man, have a lot of pull and leeway with Brian Nagler, man. I guess, Chris, if you had to really sort of, pick somebody out of the foreign pack, is there like one particular player, Chris, you're kind of keeping an eye on overseas and in camp? Right now, Chris, the one I'm watching from the overseas import, Chris, is Mariana Tolo. I mean, I've heard a lot of good stuff about Mariana. Of course, she brings the height, the 6'5" factor, being a center that can match up perhaps with Brittany Griner when they get to that point in time to play the Mercury or even battle Sylvia Fowles when Chicago comes, or even Erica Disposa, Chris. Any sort of player that was brought in over the offseason, you're slowly keeping an eye on, and all, and why? Who is that player and who isn't, and why?
I think probably Erin Phillips, since she's a veteran and won 2 titles, one with Indiana and then one last season with the Phoenix Mercury. That veteran, and that could probably lead the Sparks to the championship.
Chris, it's a valid point, and as my other friend, Chris, remember there's 2 of them now, but my other friend, Jess, who operates the Dynatarasi Bun page on Twitter, Chris, told me that, basically wherever Erin goes, she makes the team that much better. And Chris, also, man, I like your pick, though, because also, Chris, her presence is going to help out in the three-point department, Chris, when there's no KT for the first month of the season because of overseas duty. I'd also say, Chris, Jen Hampson is on everyone's radar. I mean, we heard so much about Jen during her college career at BYU, playing both volleyball and basketball during her time there. Chris, I say Hampson, man, because there's a lot of potential that the Sparks can't afford to lose. Chris, I always say that because you're talking about a 6'7" center that can go mano-a-mano and get in Brittany Griner's face 4 to 5 times a season, man. That is the one player, Chris, I think everyone out there, amongst the Sparks fam on Twitter, the whole league, Chris, sort of saying, what will LA do with Hampson? Because, Chris, players like her don't fall from trees, man. You don't get BGs, Hampsons, Fowles, and DeSouzas every day, man, or Deladons where they're 6'4" plus, playing center or playing forward in the pros, man. So I think Hampson's probably, Chris, the player that we're going to be watching in the preseason, and that we're going to be kind of, Chris, hoping and praying the Sparks keep, because, man, that could be the one puzzle piece that might actually save LA against the Mercury in the season. yes, Chris, there may be no Tarasi this year, but there's still a Griner factor in the paint down there, during those 5 games, Chris. So I guess, man, one more player, I guess, that you would say that you're watching and why.
What?
One more player you're watching during the off season, along with overseas, and also during the preseason, and why?
I think, like I said, I think Jennifer Hampson should go up one-on-one.
Yeah, Chris, trust me, man. The Hampson factor versus the Griner factor is going to be one matchup that I think everybody wants to watch over the course of the season. So, again, we'll take your input, folks, on Twitter. If you guys want to get involved here with our question of the night, what is the one Sparks player brought in over the offseason you are most intrigued to watch during the season? Let us know on Twitter at LASparks265, at CalMac3, or at LASparksFan3042, and we'll take your responses for the remainder of the program for the next 14 minutes or so here on the program. But again, the question of the night again is, what LA player brought in over the offseason are you most intrigued to watch during the 2015 season? Again, let us know on Twitter. We'll take your tweets in the program here tonight. Chris, looking over the LA Sparks schedule, man, we're getting, we're inching our way, Chris, so very slowly. Chris, I want to go off real quick, man, just kind of ask you this question. I know, man, we've talked about this a lot, man. But are you relieved that the schedule's in place? We're not making petitions. We're not raising the awareness about the team leaving. Is it good to finally kind of and say, okay, look, there's no more there's no more mumbo jumbo going on. We can, sit back, relax, and watch the season without any harm or foul over the offseason, Chris. What would you say about that for the 2015 campaign?
Wait, what?
Are you a bit relieved that there's no more petitions and no more stuff that went on last season about the Sparks this year?
Yeah, I'm just relieved. Just don't have to worry about no petition going around. Just Sparks basketball, but it's just Seattle again.
Yeah, we're going to get to that, folks. And to reiterate the Sparks schedule, again, the Sparks kicked off the 2015 season right back up where they were last season. They'll take on the Seattle Storm on June 6th at 6 p.m. from Key Arena. Again, folks, we are waiting the local TV schedule. Again, folks, there will be 3 games for the Sparks on ESPN2 this year. June 23rd at Washington, July 21st versus Phoenix, and August 4th versus Minnesota. Those 3 games can be seen on ESPN2 with 25 more of those games being broadcasted on Time Warner Cable Sportsnet and Time Warner Cable Deportes. Of course, folks, even though the Sparks season has come and gone, you can, of course, stay connected and on top of the latest Sparks news and information by liking the Sparks on Facebook, following the team on Twitter and Instagram, pinning the Sparks to your pin board on Pinterest, subbing to the team on YouTube, or joining the Sparks group on LinkedIn. So like the Sparks on Facebook at facebook.com/Los Angeles Sparks. You can follow the Sparks on Twitter and Instagram at LA_Sparks. You guys can pin the Sparks to your pin board on Pinterest at pinterest.com/SparksWNBA. You can subscribe to the Sparks on YouTube at youtube.com/user/the Los Angeles Sparks, or join the Sparks group on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/company/Los Angeles Sparks. And of course, folks, the Sparks are running a Facebook contest right now for you folks to win a 4-pack of tickets to the Sparks home opener on June 14th versus the Seattle Storm at 2 p.m. All you have to do is comment. All you have to do is like and share and subscribe to the Sparks on YouTube and like and share the post about the Sparks YouTube channel on your Facebook page. You'll be eligible to win the 4-pack of tickets to the Sparks home opener on June 14th versus the Seattle Storm at 2 p.m. up there at Staples Center. Chris, again, man, as we said, there's not a whole lot really to discuss here over this part of the show. Now, Chris, I will say, folks, that tomorrow night we're going to try to come back here, but, folks, we're going to be going into the archive, folks. We're going to be breaking out one of our new shows. We've been waiting to do so much, but, Chris, tomorrow night, man, we're going to go back a bit in time, man, to a few highlights, man, across the 19 years of the WNBA and the Sparks. Folks, we are proud and privileged to announce that tomorrow night we'll be launching the first episode of Ageless Sparks, going back in time to recap and revisit some very fond memories of the past. We'll have Ageless Sparks debuting tomorrow night, following WNBA 365 tomorrow night at 10:30 p.m. Chris, I know, man, that this, man, is sort of our version of Timeless Sparks. We know that Sportsnet does Timeless Galaxy and Timeless Lakers. So, Chris, hey, if they can't do it for the Sparks, man, we'll take the initiative to do it, man. So, again, folks, Ageless Sparks recapping some of the best moments in not only Sparks history, but WNBA history. Tomorrow night, folks, we'll recap and revisit how this league even started back in 1966. And we'll also recap the first game when the Sparks took on the New York Liberty on June 21st of 1997. That is tomorrow night, 8 to Sparks at 30 p.m. right here on LAS 5. And Chris, I know, man, that this is like the fourth time we've added program to our block of shows. Chris, we're going to try to work in open court sometime next month with Chris. How cool will it be, man? I know that we don't have like the old video of the games, but Chris, at least talk about, you know, the glory days, you know, the very first formation, Chris, the Elite Eight, L.A., New York, Sacramento, Phoenix, Utah. Chris, we're also going to be opening up that show, folks, to any of you great fans that have been with the Sparks since '97. We want to have you guys on the show to talk about your memories with the Sparks. Chris, what are your thoughts, though, man, that we finally get to launch the Sparks tomorrow night here at 10:30 on LAS 5, man? Because, again, man, we were young kids, when Penny scored the first points back in '97, Chris. So what are your thoughts, man, about bringing a little flashback to the network here tomorrow night, man?
That's very great to have flashback. Just can't wait.
So again, folks, if you're a WNBA junkie and you want to talk about some of your greatest memories, or at least go back and revisit a few of them, Ageless Sparks recapping the foundation of the WNBA and the first home game, or the first game ever in league history, tomorrow night, 10:30 p.m. on LAS 365. Chris, in closing, again, man, it's been very quiet, man, but again, we'll get your final thoughts here, Chris. Overall thoughts, man. I mean, the Sparks today, man, going and signing a veteran, fan favorite, lovable player, Chris. Tamika Johnson signs with Los Angeles today. Final thoughts on the signing in tonight's show, man, before we go on to the numero uno program here, man. Again, Sparks coming up next. But again, Chris, your final thoughts on tonight's show are what?
A great signing, bringing back Tamika Johnson, since she knows the philosophy and system. Brian Nagler, she could teach it and she's a veteran, and it's very great.
Chris, one Twitter shout out to our awesome substitute on the bench tonight, Crystal Thomas, who tweeted us about 20 minutes ago saying, watching for the first time in a while, hey guys, and hey Crystal, thanks for tuning in and watching us. Hopefully you've been enjoying some much-needed time off from the court. Maybe, maybe not. If not, who knows what it is. But again, thank you, of course, for being social tonight with us here on the program. And of course, folks, the #1 show on the network is up next at 10:30, which is Sparks. And of course, folks, a reminder, tomorrow night, 10:30 p.m., Ageless Sparks, to talk about and revisit the foundation of the WNBA and the first ever game played between the Sparks and Liberty from June 21st of 1997. With that, folks, we'll take a brief break and come back. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, folks, tweets, Instagram photos, live Q&A, email. Are you not entertained? Sparks Jam is coming up next on LAS 365. Until then, folks, we'll be right back after this quick message and quick break, so please don't go away. Again, we got Sparks Jam next, so get ready, folks, to send those tweets, IG photos, emails, live Q&A, and much more here on LAS 365. That's coming up at the bottom of the hour. So don't go away. We'll be back after this. Don't go away.